I've been in education most of my life. I taught high school. Then as I got my graduate degrees, I ended up teaching at the university. Then I ended up as the superintendent of a science school up in Santa Cruz, California, where I ended up as I was on the board of directors at UC Santa Cruz Long's Marine Lab. But the biggest problem is trying to find out where to start and stop. I actually taught a 14-week course at the Tempe Calvary Bible College, and I couldn't cover everything. It just seems like there's so much in the scientific realm. And that's why, as you see, it says science and the Bible, what you are not being told. That is not right. The students need to know both sides of the issue. But unfortunately, the teachers don't know it, so they don't know what to tell them. But the other thing that breaks my heart as a teacher, as an educator, is when I see students being taught what to think, not how to think. What I mean is they're taught to the test. Deductive reasoning, common sense, problem solving are thrown out the door. In fact, they are discouraged from asking questions. And that's just not right. So that's kind of what God has called us to do, is to come out and present both sides of the issue. It's okay for us to have different opinions. That's legal. But what's not okay is for me or any scientist or teacher to inflict our opinions on our students as if it were fact. And that's what's happening. And unfortunately, in my history, I was kind of a late bloomer. I grew up in a Christian home. I thought I was a Christian because what I believed was that made you a Christian is you were born in America, you prayed before meals, and you had to go to church. You met those requirements, you were in. My grandmother had a motivator to get us to go to church. It was called a willow branch. So I just assumed I'm a Christian, born in America. Well, at age 14, I ended up with that hormone that kicks in that gives you all wisdom. Where I knew more than my parents, yeah. And I got to go to high school. I was so excited. High school, because I was a science nerd from the get-go. And so I got to take real science from this great athlete, great scholar. He was a freshman football coach. And boy, did my life change in a hurry. First day of high school, walk into class, and he lets everybody get in. And the teacher looks out over the classroom, and he says, "Before we get started, class, I need to ask a question. Are any of you in this class Christians?" What? What does that have to do with your first day of high school biology, Well, I looked around. That was 1962, and I looked around the room. There was a lot of people in there, but about 5 or 6 hands went up. I figured, well, I'm one of those, so I raised my hand. This is where my life changed, because then he kind of smiles and says, "I want to apologize to those of you who raised your hand and said you're a Christian, because by the time the semester's over, you won't be." Oh. Wow. I mean, talk about doing flip-flop. My stomach tightened. I'm trying to think, was my mother and my grandmother lying to me? What's going on? Oh, it's crazy. You know how you said you won't be a Christian by the time the semester's over? I wasn't by the time the day was over. I made up my mind that science had the answers, because this great scholar, great theologian, or great teacher tells me that we evolved from this warm little pond of chemicals. And he hands out our textbooks with Darwin, and he starts telling us about Darwin. Guys, it was absolutely disturbing. I couldn't wait to get home. I went home and walked into my mom. I'm 14, and I'm taller than my mom now, so it was kind of cool. And I majored in obnoxiousness, so I had a real edge. Put my arm around, "Mom, I'm 14. I'm in high school. I know everything. You can take this Jesus and put it over Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. It's a myth." Not smart thing to say to a good Southern Baptist prayer warrior lady. No. My mother is a very sweet, gentle lady, but she turned downright hostile there. I mean, the color drained out of her face. These little veins started to pulsate, and the finger came out and pushed me across the room. And she's just, she couldn't even talk. She was so upset. She reached out, grabbed a Bible. She had Bibles hanging from the ceiling in her pockets on the floor. She had Bibles everywhere. She was a Jesus freak. She actually put yellow marks and red marks in the Bible, So she started quoting scripture, and I just smiled, and I started quoting Darwin. My mother was a great prayer warrior lady. She was just unprepared to defend her faith to an obnoxious 14-year-old scientifically. So she runs over, I had her in tears, she drops the little Bible, she runs over the family Bible stand and picks up this big family Bible, with the big thick cover, the white thing. I thought, what is she going to quote out of that one? Nothing. She just ran over, bam! Whoa, and it's funny now, but it wasn't then, let me tell you. It was not a love tap. My mother whacked me. And it made me mad. It frightened me. It made me mad. And I turned on her and I says, I will show you. See, I made a vow that I was going to prove that science had the answer. That's why I have all these degrees. I was so intent on proving it. So it was not till 1 month after my 40th birthday that I actually realized there was a God and I wasn't him. Hey, that's a big step for a Ph.D. My mom pointed out, though, what Ph.D. stands for, piled high and deep. Mm-hmm. She was a wise lady, let me tell you. And she definitely pointed out which one of us was right, let me tell you.